7 years ago, I didn't want to be here, and not here as in on this big red dot in front of you gorgeous lot, but here as in here in the world. And it might sound dramatic, and yes, my star sign is a Leo, and we are known for our theatrics, but it is also very much true. So today, between 30 to 40% of all suicide attempts are thought to have had one thing in common. And that thing is alcohol. And we need to talk about alcohol and mental health. And more importantly, we need to talk about the fact that we aren't talking about alcohol and mental health. And whether you drink, whether you struggle with your mental health or not, this conversation is relevant for everyone because you will all know someone who does. And I think you will actually know multiple people who do. So my story is a cliche tale as old as time. To everyone else, I spent my 20s thriving. So I had a great job, a great family, and a great personality, which is something that you'll be pleased to know I still have to this day. But inwardly, I was struggling with the world. Throughout my late teens and early 20s, I hated almost everything about myself. So I hated the way I looked. I hated the way my brain worked. I hated my constant need to be the funniest, the smartest, the best, the perfectest. I hated the way that it felt like everyone else had a manual for life that I seemed to be missing, and I was chronically anxious and struggling with bouts of depression. So the perfect thing to discover when you hate who you are is alcohol. It is like being able to control your own human command center, so you can dial up the parts of you that you wish were more, and you can dial down the parts of you that you wish were less. When you have a busy brain, you can turn down the volume on the voice that says, you're not enough, no one likes you, or you have nothing interesting to say. And as a chronic perfectionist with a need to control life, it is a drug that took me quickly. And it is a drug that is the most important part. We cannot ignore that. So I started drinking at 18, largely influenced by university drinking culture. So if there was an award for the ultimate party girl, I would have at least won silver medal, and I was narrowly missing out on gold because lots of my nights were ending up with me crying, screaming at my friends, or waking up in Dover because I'd fallen asleep on the train. And just for context distance, I live about 55 miles from Dover. So I was still the friend, though, that you called if you wanted a big chaotic night out with messy stories that you would talk about for months. And I was actually nicknamed Generous Millie, and that wasn't because I gave my time or my energy or my kindness to anyone, but it was because I was always the first to buy a round of Jaeger bombs. So by 26, I was at my lowest, so you can enjoy these visual aids which were never meant for public consumption. So when I shared them with my best friends in a WhatsApp chat, I never imagined I'd be presenting them in a TEDx talk to half of Teesside. So by this point, my drinking wasn't about fun anymore. It was about complete obliteration. So I was putting myself in really dangerous situations. I was blacking out and I was waking up with no memory of my night. But it is important to know here that I still wasn't drinking every day. So I would use my weekdays to recover, both physically and mentally. But then by the time it got to the weekend, I would jump straight back on the party train and repeat the cycle over and over again. So I was a weekend warrior, but I was very much losing the battle. So I have a question for you, and that is, who do you think of when you think of someone who has problems with alcohol? Now, I'm not a betting girl, but I imagine that it would look something like this, which is an image generated by me asking AI the same question. So one of the unique things about alcohol use is we have this idea that it takes one form or looks one way, and that is usually this depiction. So it's like the middle-aged man who's lost everything. The problem with this is that it can invalidate issues with alcohol that don't necessarily fit the mold. So like me, I was a 20-something, I had a thriving social life and a great job. So one of the second unique things about alcohol use, and mental health specifically, is issues with it can become cyclical very quickly. So it can almost become very chicken and egg-like in terms of what came first. So it's, are you drinking so much because your mental health is on the floor, or is your mental health on the floor because you are drinking so much? And the longer the cycle continues, the harder it is to establish cause and effect, and the harder the cycle is to break. So when I first told people that I wanted to stop drinking, there were several things that I heard over and over and over and over and over again. The first one was, why? And it is a fair question, but to anyone who knew me or spent time with me, it should have been obvious. But as the saying goes, alcohol is the only drug that you have to justify not taking. 2 is, but you don't have a problem / you're not an alcoholic. By 26, I was at my lowest. I was spending entire weekends with the curtains closed and putting myself in really dangerous situations. But because I wasn't hiding alcohol or putting it in a coffee cup, people thought that I didn't have a problem. Alcoholic is a strange label to me. So did you know that there is no physiological test to determine whether someone is or isn't an alcoholic? It is up to us as the consumer to decide upon as being our label. Now, I want to caveat that this is not to say we should remove this, but it is slowly being erased from medical literature in favour of alcohol use disorder. So this is for several reasons. So firstly, some people will actually be really hesitant to seek help simply because they don't identify with this label, so they feel like they don't have a problem. Secondly, the label can paint things in black and white, so either you are or you aren't, when in reality, alcohol use disorder exists on a spectrum. And then lastly, there is now a push for more person-centered language. So the argument is that this word can reduce people to a single trait or characteristic, when really they are so much more than this. They are humans, they are just like you, they are just like me, and they are struggling with an addictive substance. And then the last one is my favourite: you're not that bad. In my 33 years on the planet, I've never heard anyone declare that they are giving up smoking to be met with, but you're not that bad. It is a strange thing that alcohol comes with this arbitrary threshold. There are no other problems in life where you're not really expected to deal with them when they first arise. So in my first book, I use the analogy of a house fire. So if we all saw a fire in the corner now, we wouldn't go, it's not that bad, we'll just leave it until it's engulfed in flames. We would tackle it there and then. So I was on fire, and if I'd waited until I was bad enough, I would have burned to the ground. So at 26, I decided that I was going to stop drinking, and it has now been 7 years since I stopped. Thank you. So I thought I was alone in this journey, and I hate the word journey, but it is what it is. And I felt like no one felt the way I did about alcohol, that I could leave it for a week, but when I did drink, it kind of swept me away. So in 2018, I started Sober Girls Society, and we are now the largest community in the world for sober and sober curious women. And I realised so quickly from starting this that my story was actually one of the least unique stories in the world. So within months, hundreds of women had shared their stories with me that bore an exact resemblance to mine. So over the last 7 years of being sober, countless mental health days, prevention months and awareness weeks have come and gone, and it is so rare that I see a mention of alcohol or drugs. Instead, we are encouraged to talk or open up. But when a lot of people do decide to talk to their friends or maybe say, I think I'm going to stop drinking, they are met with these 3 words: boring, preachy, judgmental. So if I came to you today and said that running changed my life, would you say that I was preachy? And if I came to you and said surfing or reading or building Lego transformed my mental health, would you say that I was judgmental? Probably not. But again, not to be dramatic, it is a matter of life and death that we speak about this. So in 2018, the same year that I got sober, this beautiful woman, Sophie Graydon, sadly died by suicide. Now, Sophie's toxicology report revealed that she had a blood alcohol reading of 201 milligrams per 100 millilitres, which is about 3 times the legal driving limit. And she had also taken cocaine. So when news of Sophie's death broke, much of the narrative online focused on the mental toll that reality TV can take on its contestants. And while this information was crucial, equally important things were missing from the dialogue. So it was the same just 1 year later when fellow contestant Mike Thalasitas similarly died by suicide. And Mike also had alcohol and cocaine in his system. So did you know that the 24-hour period following alcohol consumption is associated with a 7-fold increase in the risk for suicidal behaviour? Meaning the 24 hours after you drink, you are 7 times more likely to act on suicidal thoughts. And when you combine alcohol with cocaine, you create a whole new substance, which is called cocaethylene, and the risk for suicide for this is 16-fold. So alcohol can lower your inhibitions. It's why we take a lot more risks when we are drinking. And alcohol can lower someone's inhibitions enough that they might take actions that they might not have otherwise taken, like self-harm, suicide. So the coroner at Sophie's hearing said that he was certain she would not have acted in the way that she did if she had not have taken alcohol and cocaine. So alcohol poses a unique dual threat. Not only does it increase the likelihood of us acting on impulsive behaviours, but it also increases the likelihood of mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, and if those symptoms are already there, it can exacerbate them. It can also exacerbate symptoms of neurodevelopmental conditions like ADHD. So alcohol can also cause you to black out. This is where maybe you don't remember your night, and this is caused by your blood alcohol concentration rising quickly, so maybe you're drinking very quickly. Now, there are two types of blackouts. We have fragmentary, so maybe you remember who you spoke to, but you don't remember the exact conversation. And then we have on block, which is maybe you don't remember large parts of your night. So the wild thing is not that you forgot what happened, it is that alcohol affects the part of your brain which is responsible for making long-term memories. So essentially, those memories are never made. So your brain can't recall something that is never recorded. So if you have ever had a blackout, you will know how scary it is to wake up not knowing what you said, what you did, or maybe even how you got home. And it can absolutely impact your mental health and the way you feel about yourself. So alcohol can also cause hangover anxiety. So the dreaded hangxiety or beer fear is partly due to perhaps blackouts, but it's also due to alcohol leaving your body. So this disrupts neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which are important for regulating mood. So when you combine this with dehydration, no sleep, or worrying about what you did or said, it can trigger thoughts of intense anxiety and even suicidal thoughts. So the subject of alcohol mental health is so complex. I would need far more of your time today to examine all the intricacies, but I would love to leave you with some final thoughts that will be relevant to you, whether you drink a little or a lot. So if someone tells you that they aren't drinking, please don't call them boring. Please don't try and persuade them otherwise, and unless you know them really well or they volunteer the information, maybe don't even ask them why. The second one is, if someone tells you that they are giving up alcohol, please don't tell them that they are not that bad or that they don't have a problem. Most of the time, we have no idea of the full story. So some people might stop drinking because they're going through IVF, chemotherapy, for religious reasons, or they might be supporting a loved one who is struggling. So all reasons are valid, even if that reason is they just don't want to. If you are thinking about your own drinking, don't ask, am I an alcoholic or do I have a problem? Ask, is alcohol causing problems for me? Ask if your mind or your life will be better if you were cutting down or quitting altogether. Now, lastly, if you are feeling like you don't want to be here, I promise you that the answer is not at the bottom of a bottle or in a packet. You will not find happiness there. You will find it somewhere, and if you want my starting advice, go inwards. So I am happy to report that largely thanks to sobriety, I now really want to be here, both in the world and on this big red dot in front of you. Gorgeous lot, thank you.